we're dead. Let me tell you why, and especially why today's first-time home buyer is dead. I'm talking about the future direction of the housing market here. Stick around, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand all of this and more. Hi, I'm Keith Weinhold. This is GRE. Now, you might have learned that supply and demand dictates price by the time that you got your high school diploma, but you know what? There's another component within that fewer consider, and that is your capacity to pay. All right, say that you and I are crawling through the hot desert. We are penniless and we are dying of thirst. Well, we have pretty high demand for a drink of water as you and I are crawling through the desert. And my gosh, do we feel lucky. We run across a trekker with a water canteen. Oh, well, great. Demand just met supply, and a market is about to be created, and we're going to live because he has water for us, right? No. See, they charge 1 penny for a drink, so we can demand a drink all that we want, but because we're penniless, we're dead. We lacked the capacity to pay. Well, now that the median monthly mortgage payment is 56% higher today than it was just 1 year ago due to higher mortgage rates and higher prices, a lot of renters that wanted to buy a home feel like they're dehydrated and they're as penniless as the desert crawler. They can demand to be a homeowner all that they want, but because they lack the capacity to pay, they cannot become a homeowner and they stay a renter. In fact, today's wannabe first-time homebuyer is in even worse shape than Texas's power grid. And by the way, I want to give some credit to the real estate guys, Robert Helms and Russell Gray. Check them out. They first taught me about some version of that capacity to pay discussion. So let's take a look at the crux of the problem here as we look at the supply chart. American housing supply is still so scarce that understand we need about a 250% supply increase from somewhere just a bit over 600,000 available homes now in the active listing count here, up to about 1.5 million, back to where we were around 2016 or so. That's just to have supply-demand equilibrium, not to be oversupplied. We need a 250% increase just to have an equilibrium. All right, well, with that and everything else, what should keep supporting the higher housing prices that I expect through this year and beyond? The first one is higher mortgage rates. Now you got to be saying, well, come on now. In what sort of twisted, upside-down era in place in time would higher mortgage rates correlate with higher prices? What kind of sense does that make? Oh, well, when and where would that happen? That's right now, right where you're sitting today. Because for 18 months now, we've had higher mortgage interest rates, and all along, we have had higher housing prices alongside those higher rates. Like I've shared with you elsewhere, mortgage interest rates have increased substantially 9 times since 1994. So here in not quite the last 30 years, with 9 substantial times that mortgage rates increased, housing prices increased 7 out of those 9 times, as you can see demonstrated in that chart right here. Mortgage interest rates actually don't have that much to do with housing prices. In fact, a lot of times it can be a confirmation that the economy is doing well and it needs to cool off. That's why they're raising rates in the first place. And remember, when the Fed lowers rates, that's when the economy is doing poorly and needs support. So this is really counterintuitive to a lot of people. Higher rates generally correlate with higher prices. So we're going with what happens historically here. It's history and what really happens over hunches with what might happen. Yeah, a lot of times economics is counterintuitive. Now let's think about the home builder angle too. That's how we get new supply on the market. Home builders building more homes. You know what happens with higher mortgage interest rates? You typically see these indices of home builder confidence and home builder sentiment fall because home builders think that fewer people are going to be able to afford homes when mortgage interest rates go up. Maybe they need to look at some history more often. Well, what happens when home builder confidence sinks? Builders build less. Well, what happens when builders build less? Yes, housing supply is further constrained, which is actually supportive of more price increases. That's another dynamic that's happening right now, right where you are today. Of course, the other thing that happens in higher mortgage rates is existing homeowners. If you've already got your home, you probably have a pretty low mortgage interest rate. Well, you might still move, but you're less likely to do so because if you sell your home, you've got to sell your rate with it. And if you get a replacement home, you're going to get a higher mortgage rate with it. So when homeowners don't sell their existing home, what does that do? Further crimps supply. That home never comes onto the market. What else is going to keep driving higher prices? It's another inelastic condition. It's difficult to change this, and that is demographics. That 28 to 34 age cohort is the most populous in America. So why is that important? What makes this so special? That is prime household formation age. So understand this, when a 51-year-old, not a very populous cohort in America, when they go buy a home, what do they typically do? Well, most of the time they sell a home that they've moved out of. Buying one takes supply off the market, and then the one they're selling puts one back on the market. So that transaction is a net even. Supply and demand equals out. But what happens when these more populous, say 29-year-olds, when they go buy a home, they take a piece of supply off the market, but typically they didn't have one to sell and put back on the market. And there are so many more people in that 28 to 34-year-old age group than any other age group. So this is what is really absorbing supply. Now, I've been saying this all along that home prices are just going to continue to keep rising. In fact, take a look quickly at this clip. This was November of 2021 when I told you that home prices are going to keep rising all throughout this year when some people believed that they wouldn't.
Is there any reason to think that house prices, this price appreciation, could slow down over the next 12 months or even decrease in price? Any reason to think that?
I think it's likely that home price appreciation will continue, but the rate of appreciation will slow down. Everyone wants to know what's coming, and Fannie Mae, their predictions are that home prices will appreciate 7% in 2022, cooling from this year's year-over-year rate where home price appreciation was in the teens. Fannie Mae expects there to be higher home prices and higher mortgage interest rates in 2022. Yeah, go ahead and put a like on this if you like that I'm talking about the future direction of the housing market. Hey, that's a pretty low cost of admission, just leaving a like on the video. A third reason for continued increased home prices is the strength of existing homeowners and how financially strong that they are. By now, if they have a mortgage, that probably meant that their underwriting standards were pretty good. Mortgage underwriting standards are tough, so existing homeowners needed to be in pretty good financial shape in order to get a mortgage in the first place. That's supportive. That bars against having some delinquency and foreclosure down drain, which is the sort of thing that caused a crash 15 years ago. But today, 40% of homeowners have no mortgage at all. What in the heck are these zero leverage psychos doing? I don't know. They must not be listening to the Get Rich Education audio podcast. Check that out on your podcatcher. A new show is released every Monday morning where I'm often talking about the benefits of leverage and having good debt. Listen to the Get Rich Education podcast. I'm your host. That's a completely different program than what we're talking about here. And then among those people that do have mortgages, the national loan-to-value ratio is an almost incomprehensibly low 30%. So what that means is for a person with a $500K home, for example, they have a mortgage balance of only $150K. So my point is that the existing homeowner is in really good shape. If they weren't in good shape, they wouldn't have to fire sale their home. They have substantial equity in their home. They don't have to walk away from it. They could sell it. And let's take a look at this. The delinquency rate on residential mortgages just keeps descending, largely supporting what I've been talking about here. And those people that were protected by mortgage loan forbearance, if they can't pay, their properties should be quickly absorbed by such an undersupplied market. A fourth reason that housing prices continue to be supported and should continue to be is what I'll call the Fed factor. Let's take a look at this chart of the federal funds rate. It is nearing 2%. Many people expect it to be raised near 2.5% during their next announcement on the 27th here. Okay, sure, the Fed is trying to slow inflation, but in a real estate context, the Fed is trying to fight a supply issue by dampening home buyer demand. Now, eventually they're gonna have a chance to stomp out demand if today's mortgage rates say double. But see, what this all does, the Fed factor, it's not so supportive of prices in itself, but it's more like where can you find an opportunity to get in and profit in the real estate market? What these higher rates do, decreasing affordability, is it's pushing droves of people into renting properties. So you have this ever-growing pool of rental demand and renter households overall. These are the people that cannot afford to buy a drink in the desert, which is analogous to being able to buy a home. They can demand a home all they want, but due to low supply and not having the capacity to pay, that first-time wannabe homeowner is dead. So what's the bottom line here? Importantly, the two big variables, they are rigid and they are bulletproof as Kevlar, meaning they absolutely cannot change in the next few years. And those two big things are high demographic demand and a low housing supply, which gets back to where we began this discussion, supply and demand. That's really simple stuff. These are inelastic conditions. So in this current housing market and the housing market in the near future, the losers are renters and wannabe first-time homebuyers, which often have to be renters, and the winners are existing homeowners and rental property owners. If you can afford to buy property and rent it out to others, there is upward pressure on rents. And you can make this actionable at our sister website, gremarketplace.com. This is where you can leverage my industry contacts to get started with rental property. I own properties with a lot of these same providers across different U.S. states. Most of these properties, which I've actually never seen in person before. And how can I have the confidence to own rental property without ever having seen it? Well, for one thing, I partner with these turnkey real estate companies, which you can do as well. Turnkey really means three things. Number one, that this company sources the property for you. They either renovate it because they're fix and flippers at scale, or they build it new. Secondly, they put a qualified tenant in the property. And then thirdly, if you want, it's an option, they hold it under management for you. So in my life, I just get property management statements from various managers at the end of every month. So if you're new, you can start small, but think big. Oftentimes, you're going to buy a property that's less than the median national price, less than $400K. I'll see you over there at GRE Marketplace. I'm Keith Weinhold. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for stopping by.